We were just sitting on this curb in the middle of this neighborhood, and we had just got done smoking. And I look over at my niece, and she's rocking back and forth, and she's just holding her head. And I'm just like, what's going on here? And the next thing I know, she jumps up and starts running down the street, yelling, "I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying." Well, I grew up in a small town in North Georgia, pretty eclectic town, I would say. Had people from all walks of life. Most of my memories as a child were arguing and fighting between my parents. Then it was going into middle school, 7th grade, my sister died of cancer. And it was kind of at that point where my faith was really tested. And I began to sway back and forth in whether or not I was going to live what I knew was real, or whether I was just trying to fit into the crowd like everybody else was doing. And it was my 10th grade year of high school. I had to make a tough decision where I asked my dad to leave the home. And it made a huge impact on me, because I loved him with all my heart, but at the same time, it was not healthy, the environment that we were all living in. And it came to another decision point in my life where I had to say, am I going to serve God, or am I just going to continue down this route of trying to fit in and do everything that the world says is going to fulfill you? And that's what I chose. So we ended up taking a trip to North Carolina in October 2011 and to see some family. And while I was up there, ended up doing this drug spice with my niece and my nephew one day. And we were just sitting on this curb in the middle of this neighborhood, and we had just got done smoking. And I look over at my niece, and she's rocking back and forth, and she's just holding her head. And I'm just like, what's going on here? And the next thing I know, she jumps up and starts running down the street, yelling, "I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying," at the top of her lungs. So at first, I'm kind of in shock, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? If I get up and run after her, like, what is that going to look like if somebody comes out of their house and sees me running after her and she's yelling, "I'm dying"? And I was like, that's definitely not going to look good. And my second thought was, well, what if she gets back to the house and she tells everybody what just happened, or that we were sitting here doing drugs? And honestly, I was more scared that she was going to get back and spill the beans than I was about somebody coming out and seeing what was going on. So I took off running after her, and she had stopped in this front yard, and she was just slumped over like a zombie with just this blank look on her face, and wasn't responsive at all. And I kind of take her over to the curb and sit her down for a second, and she calms down. And then she's like, "I just want to go back to the house." And I was like, okay, we'll go back to the house, but you're not going inside. So we go back and we sit down on the patio, and I'm just trying to kind of pick her brain a little bit about what just happened. And it was not a few minutes into it, she goes, "I know what happened." And I was like, "Well, what happened?" And she goes, "God showed me a glimpse of hell." And I'm like, "What? Showed you a glimpse of hell?" And she's like, "Yeah, as I was running, it was like my body was on fire from the inside out, and it's like my eyes were covered in blood." And she goes, "And I felt like I was dying." And God audibly spoke to me in that moment and said, "You have to make a decision to either turn your life around and give it over and live for me, or you're going to spend an eternity in hell." And essentially gave her just a glimpse of what that was like. And it was a couple minutes later, I'm just sitting there with like my heart in my stomach. And she looks at me a few minutes later, and she goes, "It's almost like he's speaking to me right now. It's crazy." And she's like, "It feels like he's saying, you've got to make the same decision." And if my heart could have sunk any lower, it would have. And it was at that point I was just like fighting inside on what I needed to do. But at the same time, I was like, I'm not making a decision right now. So a few minutes later, she goes inside, and she was going to take a shower. And then it wasn't a couple minutes later, my mom comes out and yells, "Get inside right now." And I already knew what happened. She had told everything. And we go inside, and I'm getting questioned, and they're yelling and asking all these questions. And in the middle of it, I just walked out. And I went into the bedroom, got everything I had to do, all my drugs, anything that had to do with drugs or anything like that. I got it out of my bag and I just began to walk around the neighborhood. I threw it all away. I broke everything on the ground and I just began to cry out to God. And I said, God, you know, I can't live like I'm living any longer. I need you. I need the realness of you in my life, because I know that's the only thing that is going to fulfill this hole that I have inside. And I sat down on this curb and was just weeping and crying out to God. And it was in that moment He just came over me and just broke everything off of my life. All of the addiction to drugs and alcohol and pornography. I never touched another substance from that day forward. And ever since then, I've been doing everything I can just to live completely and totally given over to Him and what He has for my life.